Hopefully, we'll not discuss C++ today.
Yeah, I hope so
We'll
too.
try. Even the bigger models will be so cheap that it doesn't really matter. Like, where do you think this is going?
I was bored out of my job, and we then started going into the voice market and realized it's like a behemoth. If you're using GPT-4o just for like a customer support chatbot, right? It's kind of like cutting an apple with a chainsaw.
Do you think customers are as sophisticated today?
A lot of education is first required, that open source versus closed source. It's a very broad topic to say that are open source models better, are closed source models better, right?
Goes back to a previous point, there's like not one best kind of
Exactly. Also, there is like this cost caveat. Sorry if I'm being very technical all the time.
No, that's why we have called you. Please educate us. When you say Simplismart is the best infra out there to serve open source models, what do you mean by being the best? Today we have a very interesting guest with us, Amritanshu, the founder CEO from Simplismart. We are going to discuss all things infra, which is a bit different from our other topics. We'll go into the details of what Simplismart is doing and how the shape is, how the industry is overall getting shaped when it comes to deploying and serving models, which is at the heart of anything that you want to do with AI. Amritanshu, welcome.
Thanks for the introduction, Anagh. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And just to start with, I think, as you said, infra is something that is not very much discussed in India, at least. That happened with dev tools as well, right? And that is exactly what we are seeing with infrastructure, but it is pretty evolving in India, globally as well. And yeah, would love to have this chat.
Yeah, perfect. I think we have just the right person. The absolute CUDA nerd. Hopefully, we'll not discuss C++ today.
Yeah, I hope so
We'll try. Cool. So tell us, how was Simplismart born? I know the story, but I would love for everyone to know. It's very interesting.
Me and my co-founder Devansh, we actually have been now almost living and working together for the last 10 years. Met in the first year of our college. And I did not have a computer science degree, so I generally glommed onto people who did. And basically that is when we started. We started doing small projects for like some freelancing money in the college. And we started our jobs as machine learning engineers. So I was in capillary technologies. He started his career as a machine learning engineer in Avamo, building a conversational AI platform there. And we used to share the same flat. And I think we worked for 4 years. I moved on to Oracle Cloud. There again, I was working on ML infra inferencing, same with capillary technologies. And my co-founder Devansh, he switched over to Google Search. And the idea was we both were essentially writing the same code for different organizations, for different scales, for different use cases. And we were like, this is probably a gap.
And we are talking about 2020-ish?
Yeah, so 2019 we started out. And I think on the inferencing part, initially there was not much fuss about it.
So this is pre-LLM, right? This is inference for deep learning.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it actually started coming into picture once these transformer models came in, right? BERT models and stuff like that.
Yes.
And we just started out as machine learning engineers. So that was a unique experience for us, because till now we had like the quantum of the model generally used to be very small, like 100, 200 MB. So you won't actually care if it is like your inferencing speed is 100 milliseconds, 150 milliseconds. But once transformer models started coming in, my only job kind of became just to optimize these models. And it always took like 3 months, 4 months to match those SLAs, right? And this is exactly what Devansh was doing there. And we started out as an AutoML platform. Rather interestingly, it actually came from a hackathon that we did in December 21. And I was bored out of my job. He was on his notice period. And he was like, you used to do a lot of hackathons in college. Let's do one together. And we just started searching for a hackathon on DevPost. And we got one. And their cash prize was like $10,000. Deadline was 3 days after we looked at it. It was going on for 3 months. And we were like, let's give it a try. We are anyway not doing anything. So we coded for 72 hours. And we ended up winning that. So we were happy, like we'll probably pay off our loans and live a good life. But in February, I think we got a call from the company that organized the hackathon. And surprising to us, they were really in awe with the platform. And they offered us to buy out the platform as well. But I think that was a particular moment when we thought like, if Indian Oil wants to buy your house, there's probably oil underneath, right? And let's like leave our jobs and start digging in. And that's how we started out, started building the platform, raised some funding, got some customers. Yeah.
Interesting. And how did you land on the current platform then if you started out as AutoML?
Yeah, that's rather interesting. So we iterated like, we were iterating like every 2 months, I think, because we started out as an AutoML platform. So we were of the thought that right now, at that point of time, at least in 2022, AutoML was very, how do I put it, like very rigid and not transparent. And that always used to bug us as data scientists. So before talking to any customers, we actually looked at our jobs and realized like what are the gaps that I would love to fill in, right? And that was the best part. I think that's how we also are able to develop some intuition on how our customer would react to a particular thing that we add onto the platform. So started out as an AutoML platform saying that we need transparency. We just don't need traditional AutoML platforms which like give you like regression models or classification model. You just put in your data and get the API, right? That essentially disregards the data scientist as a whole. And I don't think it is very much feasible for an AutoML platform to compete with the kind of intuition that a data scientist has. So we essentially started building on top of like lower level APIs, TensorFlow and PyTorch. And the idea was like, every parameter of the model will be kind of searchable, right? So everything that you want to build a model from scratch with, that will be a searchable parameter. And you can essentially configure it with the most transparency that you want. We were a pretty small startup back then, and we started selling this to smaller startups, right? And then we realized that they don't have the data, the money, or like the pain point right now to train these models. So we came on to a customer, I think in July 23, and it's a good startup. I just won't take the name right now. So they are basically working in translation and localization. And we were trying to train a speech model for them. And they were like, hey, I use Whisper for speech to text and I am using these OpenAI APIs. And the cost is too high for me right now. So do you think if you are able to make training faster, can you make inferencing faster as well? So we were like, we might even give it a try. So we had our inference engine, but we never realized how fast it was, surprisingly.
It was you have oil underneath your house.
Exactly,
Yes.
but we never dug that far, right? So we tried out the Whisper model, and it was already like almost 3x faster than OpenAI APIs. And we were in awe that we now will be able to give this API for almost 30x less, right? And that seems like a breakthrough, because you always listen to these things that if you're able to do something 10x in cost, 10x in speed, or something like that, it might be a feasible thing. So we tried out with that customer, and we finally first closed our first contract within like 4 days. We were not able to do this for 5 months, and that is when I think we actually realized our ICP. And we then started going into the voice market and realized it's like a behemoth right now, right? Because you have transcription services. A lot of people now are building voice bots, right? So that cost actually was almost 20-25% of the revenue that these companies are making, right? And that's huge. So we are not just able to save money for them, we are obviously able to deliver a better end user experience for their customers, as well as just like improve their margins, not just from like a money perspective, but from a numbers perspective as well, right? So yeah, that was the idea, and that is how we started iterating towards going into different markets for voice. Then we realized if someone is doing speech to text kind of thing, then they'll be using LLMs as well, right? So we started selling LLMs as well on our platform. They were fast enough as well. Then we got some diffusion models, then we got text to speech models. So that is how I think the idea evolved, where we just started out very much like a consultative kind of thing to our customer, and we realized that this is like a pretty great use case for us which we are able to solve, and it serves a larger market, right? So I think that's how we finally got onto this inferencing engine, and now we have the fastest inferencing engine for LLMs, for speech models, for diffusion models.
Yeah, you have been topping the charts. Yeah, congrats for that again.
Thanks.
Yes. So you picked one point that the first customer you got, you saw that 20 to 25% of the revenue actually was going to inference.
Speech
We're
to-
not talking about costs here.
Exactly.
Right? So that's a big deal in
Exactly.
software, which has typically operated at 80-85% gross margin, all the SaaS companies. Now we are talking about a new world, these AI native software products, where the major cost of serving the customer ends up becoming inference.
Inference, correct.
Do you think it's a passing thing, or it's gonna stay like, because I think Sam Altman and maybe like a lot of other people have said that this is kind of the inference world is kind of improving faster than even the Moore's law would predict for
Correct.
the semiconductor world, right?
Interestingly, Moore's law does not apply here.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right. So I think, yeah, definitely it's a passing thing. And as like the market matures, right now what we have seen is a lot of enterprises are trying out different things, right? They are just trying to roll out a particular feature, roll out a platform, trying to save cost through AI, or like basically get a new revenue stream. And they are just testing this out with customers, that how much will you pay for this, right? And for that, it's like an investment. Even if I'm selling my product at a loss at the cost of inferencing, right? I think that is something that enterprises want to adopt, because as we mature, they'll be able to scale this more. And how I am trying to say that is basically, if you are trying out a new product, right, go with the best LLM.
Sure.
Go with like a Claude 3.5, Claude Sonnet, or like GPT-4o. That's what I believe. And once you have built that MVP, once you are satisfied that, okay, this is something that my customer will pay for, right? Once you do that, then I think the cost optimization part kicks in, right? And that is how you are able to solve this with open source models as well. So what we have seen is basically, even if you like fine tune a very small model, like a 7 billion model on even like less than 10,000 data points, it actually surpasses GPT-4o for like a particular task, right? So the philosophy is that if you're using GPT-4o just for like a customer support chatbot, right, it's kind of like cutting an apple with a chainsaw, when you just need a small knife that is sharpened with your data. So that's what I think. And we have seen more mature enterprises who have tried this out, who basically have made their customers pay for the product, are now looking to optimize the cost, because it won't make sense to sell it on a loss, right?
But what I meant, Amritanshu, like I think everyone is actually worried about costs right now. This is
Correct.
absolutely the right thing to do. But the way, like, you have already showed on NVIDIA GPUs that you can kind of get close to Grok.
Exactly.
On performance, on latency, throughput costs, all the on the parameters. So maybe 3-4 years out, and I think we are all just guessing. So I would love
Yeah.
your guess. Do you think it will matter? Do you think enterprises will build small models for cost purposes, or it will be like even the bigger models will be so cheap that it doesn't really matter? Like, where do you think this is going?
So I think this basically hinders with normal mathematical approach, right? If you have like a 500 billion model versus you have a 7 billion model, no matter how better the chips get, which I think it will, because like Nvidia is releasing Blackwell, I'm sure AMD, Intel, the likes of them, they won't be sitting quiet and see Nvidia taking all the market share, right? So I think there's a lot of evolution that is still pending in the field. But even if the chips get really good at it, right? So even like if a 500 billion model costs you say $1 for 1 million tokens, still a 7 billion model will be costing you 5 cents for million tokens. So you will anyway go on to that if you don't need that kind of a large model to like host your particular use cases. Obviously, these generalized models are specific to some use cases, but for your niche use cases where you have enough data, where you are an enterprise, you know exactly what you want to build, I think saving the cost will be always going on, right? Let's take the example of data, right? So data came in like 2010. People are still optimizing on those costs, right? Whether it is data computation, whether it is data storage. So I think
Right.
this is a long running thing, and it evolves as the market evolves. It's just like the cusp of inflection point of generative AI right now.
This problem statement, right, to optimize infra to the T and offload every complexity that comes with deploying and serving these massive models.
Correct.
There are a bunch of players now, right?
Exactly.
And when you came and pitched to us, there were already, I think, at least 6 or 7
players. Yeah.
very well funded US startups, US based startups. going after the pretty much the same problem statement with slightly different positionings. But you came and pitched to us saying that we are absolutely the best in the world. I could not believe in the first call.
But we did a lot of technical due diligence, I think.
Exactly. Eventually, of course, we fell in love. And of course, we are proud to be backers here. But what do you mean by that? I would love to, like what you told us in that pitch meeting, I would love for you to tell everyone else as well. When you say Simplismart is the best infra out there to serve open source models, what do you mean by being the best? How do you compare against platforms?
Correct. So basically being the best infra platform, like if you think traditionally, it might be like, it might come with some parameters like what is the throughput per second, which is like the latest vanity number right now, I think. What is the throughput? How easy is it to use? Are you able to provide me at a much cheaper rate? Things like that, right? But in my personal opinion, it's very difficult to classify something as a best infra platform at this point of time, because for me, how I see it is one size does not fit all, right? All these inference engines, even like the open source ones, right? They are kind of like off the shelf engines that enterprises are trying to fit for their use cases. And this is something that I believe one size does not fit all. And every enterprise has a very different need. Imagine like if we are roaming around and it's like 100 years ago, everyone is kind of wearing the same outfit, right? Everyone here is like wearing a simple white shirt and a pant.
I've noticed that, like, especially in the early 1900s movies,
Right.
especially the gangster movies, everyone wears the same, like, black trench coat
Exactly.
and the same hat. Yes,
Exactly.
that's right,
But if it happens right now, it would look a little weird. That's what's happening. That's because I think textile industry has evolved a lot. People's preferences have changed a lot, and they have seen that, hey, I can kind of personalize my outfit according to my comfort, according to my looks, according to my bodily shapes, and no one dresses the same, right? No one. So that is exactly same for enterprises as well. Right now, it's very difficult to just leverage off the shelf capabilities. A person who is like serving at like 1 million requests per hour and one enterprise serving like 1 million requests in a week, they would have really, really different use cases, different requirements, right? And that's why we are taking a more holistic view here. Obviously, we have the fastest inference engine. That is one pointer only. But I think that is the race to bottom, right? Everyone will keep optimizing. Again, like I'm very much obsessed by this whole journey that happens in every decade, right? Internet came in, everyone wanted to build applications on top of internet. Now, basically, Terraform came in by HashiCorp. I'm obsessed with Terraform, right? Then, basically, in 2010, data came in. Everyone wanted to build applications on top of data, and hence Databricks and Snowflake came in. Now, that race also is still running, I think. Every time, like Databricks brings out a new data engine, Microsoft will bring out a new one, Snowflake will bring out a new one.
So, no, I'm smiling because saying that being the fastest won't really matter that much while being the fastest.
Yeah. I think so.
That's humble bragging in a way, but interesting.
But just not from a fastest inference engine point of view, but also from a point of view is taking a more holistic view, in a sense that we don't want to be GPU brokers disguised as GenAI APIs, right? This won't work out. I'm of the very strong opinion that this won't work out, because enterprise don't want to use APIs, right? They don't want to be at the mercy of another platform that is essentially controlling their SLAs, that is controlling their cost, that is controlling their data privacy. It's very difficult to leave that control in someone else's hands, right? So every enterprise eventually will have something in-house. Again, that has happened with internet, that has happened with data, and they won't be building this themselves. Right now, whenever like a new market is starting out, everyone is of the opinion, hey, why is a startup coming in and building this for an enterprise when they have 100x of your team, right? More money, a lot more customers, right? How will you do it better than them? Because I think that's not their job. And once a platform is democratized, now you won't ever see basically a company like Slack just having their own rigs and machines and setting up the networking, RDMA, everything like that. They won't be managing their data in a sense that they would be, obviously, but with the help of a platform like Databricks or something. So this is something that happened with me firsthand in Capillary Technologies, right? So I was given a task in my internship that right now our Ambari clusters, they take like 45-50 minutes to just launch. And those were like 30-35 GPU clusters that will take 55 minutes to launch. Now that obviously incurs a lot of cost because the setup time was a lot. I was given this task that you have to bring it down to 90 seconds, just that. I wasn't given any other context. I worked on that. I developed a tool in-house, right? Now that saved a lot of money for Capillary Technologies. That brought down that time to 90 seconds. Databricks came in, right? And they had a much better platform. They had these I just had a script, right? Which obviously reduced the cost, but I didn't have like a management suite where you can see all the clusters, how they are bringing up. I didn't have a lot of reliability and tolerance, right? So Capillary finally went with them, and they did spend a lot of time building this in-house, but they finally went with them because it doesn't make sense when something is democratized and you still take time to build it in-house.
Yeah.
You'll be left behind, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the viewpoint. And for us, we are again like not just selling APIs. Obviously we'll have to do that because everyone wants to try out the inferencing speed and stuff, but we believe that right now the whole layer is scattered, right? So we have this concept of grid search hell. That is exactly why AutoML came in, right? A data scientist humanly cannot try out like 2000 combinations. That's why hyper tuning and stuff like that came in, and that is what is becoming important with inferencing also, right? A particular Gen AI model or a machine learning model for that matter, with a different quantization, with different optimizations, like there are a lot of things, speculative decoding, paged attention, and whatnot, right? So with the different model backend served on a different serving engine on a different GPU chip will give you very different cost versus latency versus throughput kind of trade-offs, right? And that's why we are basically taking an approach where we want to provide the customers with Lego blocks. We don't know what is best for you. The only person who would know what's best for you is you. We are just a mere kind of pass through layer where you say, hey, I want to take these blocks because I want my cost to be optimal, or I would spend a lot more on GPUs. I want my latency to be optimal, right? So these are the trade-offs that you have to first get it in granular levels, give it to customers so they can build this in-house, right? Using our tools and have a personalized inference engine and not just take an API and use that, right? Again, like the three pillars being the cost, like cost, SLAs, and data privacy.
Makes sense.
This is something enterprises want control over.
Fair. I think it's probably a good analogy I could think of is the databases world, right? There's no like one best database.
Exactly.
Because you would always, sometimes you'd want to optimize for query speed, sometimes you want the cold start problem to be solved, sometimes you want the concurrency to be high. Makes sense. But do you think your customers are as sophisticated today? Because I think 90% of the world, probably even more, is still in kind of pilot zone or trying out.
That's true.
So what's your value proposition today when you sell? And do you think once you enter, the value proposition also evolves over time?
So yeah, definitely it does. So we have a spectrum of customers, obviously. The more mature customers, they would buy it for the orchestration layer. They would even pay a premium. They don't want to reduce cost. They want to reduce their engineering bandwidth, right? Because it'll take them 300 engineers and like a year to develop this.
Makes sense.
Right? So for them, the value proposition is very different. That I was just talking to like one of the biggest IT consultancies, and they were telling me that speed is something that is great, cost is something that is great, but what we want this for is like model management, right? Because we are deploying hundreds of models every day, and it's getting really difficult to manage them, orchestrate them, maintain that they are tolerant enough, reliable enough. So for them, the value proposition is very different. For the lesser mature customers, I think right now who are still experimenting, they would probably just go for like speed and cost, because that is something that you find in blogs, right?
Sure.
How do you choose an inference engine?
Sure.
And everyone, obviously including us probably, will be marketing however they want to sell their platform the best. But I think those are not just the parameters. Maybe like when you're starting out, you think that, okay, this is how I have taken a decision, because there's this whole psychology that you don't make the choice for customers, but you educate them in a way that the customer will make a choice that is beneficial to you.
So you're not worried about AWS or Azure or
No, not at
GCP
all.
taking your business? Like,
No, I
because
don't.
they have SageMaker and so many other platforms,
Exactly.
Vertex and all.
and that has not worked out, honestly, because why I'm saying that is, let's take an example of DataOps, let's take an example of AutoML, right? It's not in their DNA to actually go so deep into their customer problems, right? I think what they will be looking at is how fast they can get NVIDIA Blackwell chips once they release that, right? How can I get like H100 InfiniBands, because that is their bread and butter. The why they are developing these services on top of their platform is just to make people's life easier, their customers' life easier. They won't be earning that much from that. And if we go there and take that, this is the best platform. This has happened with CloudFormation, right? Terraform, they did not develop a product like that. They just took that, right? Integrated into their marketplaces, integrated natively into their platform. That is what happened with, again, data. And that is what will happen with Gen AI as well, right? Where if I go and say that, hey, we have this standardized layer and we have the best inference engine in terms of not the fastest, not the cheapest, but best inference engine for any customer that you have, who can kind of build it like a Terraform like language and orchestrate their workloads, they won't be spending a lot of effort in building that, right? They would rather take business from me and give business to me.
Fair.
So their customers and our customers remain happy, and we have like a win-win-win situation.
Interesting. You think the ideal infra platform of the future in a way is kind of cloud agnostic, like Terraform?
Yeah, exactly. So again, not marketing myself here, but again, our thesis is
It's very
exactly
hard
that.
to do that as a founder.
I know. So exactly that, right? So we again have built this cloud agnostic layer where, so why is it? Because a lot of people keep moving from cloud to cloud, and from a cloud perspective, it becomes very easy for a cloud to lock in that vendor. And as good as it might not sound for the clouds, but we believe that they should be able to make this move. And there is a cloud agnostic layer where you basically, and there is a problem, right? Problem is something like on GCP, you can get single A100s. On AWS, you have to book it, right? On GCP, you get a particular GPU. On AWS, you won't be able to. So there's a lot of back and forth. What GPU should I use? Things like that. And that is why I think the option should be kept open. That, hey, even if I want to migrate my workload from AWS to GCP, I can do it in like 5 minutes. Literally 5 minutes. I just migrate all my clusters from AWS to GCP. Now I am on GCP, right? So yeah, I think that actually kind of makes this an open market as well, not just like a monopoly for a particular cloud. That's always good for the market.
Last question around the market right now is around open source versus closed source, right? Because a fundamental assumption for your business itself is that open source will continue to dominate a large chunk, or at least a significant chunk of how companies end up using AI in production.
100%.
Right? And we are all thankful. Like we saw Mark Zuckerberg's selfie with Llama. I think that would have been a good moment for you.
Yeah.
So we are quite thankful to all the developers and the well-funded research teams in Facebook and all who are trying to release these models.
Exactly.
And very often we are seeing that they are matching commercial models in a lot of cases. But of course, we also know that when it comes to absolute performance, your GPTs and Claude families, they tend to come on the top generally, and they come with like easy to use APIs and so on. So of course, I believe the commercial model builders, they are in their own thesis that will probably dominate. The open source is there's this tussle going on.
Correct.
What's your view? I'm sure you're bullish on the open source because that's why you're building the business. But why are you so bullish on open source?
Right. So I think firstly, it's a lot of education is first required, that open source versus closed source. It's a very broad topic to say that our open source model is better, our closed source model is better, right? And again, very much like what we were discussing about inferencing, like or throughput speed and stuff like that, the qualitative aspect of it is also kind of a race to bottom, right? And there are a lot of benchmarks. Now, I am not sure how many benchmarks out of them will be relevant to a particular customer, right?
Yeah.
Let's say right now I have a pretty good example because thanks to Meta, they released 3.1405 billion, right? And it is actually breaking GPT-4o. But again, probably OpenAI or Claude will have another model that surpasses that accuracy. And this will keep evolving, right? And we are also seeing customers, they're switching models like crazy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
they're like, we have a contract signed, we'll be deploying this. Now we are exploring this model.
Okay.
Another day, and this actually happened like I think 2-3 weeks ago. It was like a crazy week when we had like 5-6 new models, and everyone was in haywire. Like, oh, what should I try? What should I try? Right? If something is working for you,
Yeah.
I think there's no panic to kind of increase that quality just from some generic benchmarks of data sets that you have. Obviously, they are indicative of their capabilities. But what I also think is right now, what's happening is fine tuning the models is actually really difficult. And it's not about fine tuning script or something. It's about data preparation, right? People don't even know what data to be prepared to fine tune my model, right? And that is actually costing them a lot. So if you look at from this perspective, what I've also seen a lot of people do is they are writing like 2500 token long prompts. That is honestly like you are kind of almost fine tuning this model, because you are kind of giving them 5-6 examples
true,
that
yeah.
do this, do this, do this. Why not collect 100 examples, fine tune a smaller model and do that? So education, I think, is very important in this space, because again, like I would have my own agenda, probably Meta would have their own agenda, OpenAI, Anthropic, they all have their own agendas, right? I believe OpenAI and Anthropic having a lot of money. Obviously, they have built like great models, but the marketing, the messaging that they have given that this is the best, this is state of the art, right? And it will always be like this. I don't think so, right? Again, like if you are saying that, hey,
Goes back to a previous point. There's like not one best kind
exactly.
of platform. It
One
means
size
what's
does
best
not fit
for
all.
you. Yeah.
Exactly. And maybe like again, what we have to realize is like I don't think it will just be open source, and definitely it will not all be closed source, right? Leaving apart just the cost and like latency and data privacy, these kind of concerns, even after that, let's say I was just reading these benchmarks that Llama 3.1 is almost like surpasses the accuracy of GPT-4o in Python code by 15%. So different benchmarks vary a lot here, right? So again, like I think once this education is more out there with the open source kind of thing, that this will not always be the state of the art like the GPT-4o kind of models, and fine tuning actually becomes really easy. People know that, hey, I have to fine tune and it won't take a lot of time. I think we're still 6-8 months behind that. After like 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, I think people will be more easily able to fine tune these models. Again, like
also the other thing I've heard, maybe please correct me if I'm wrong, is it's actually easier and faster to fine tune smaller models, because you can bias these models more easily.
Exactly.
Versus if you like try to bias like a 400-500 billion parameter model,
they require a lot of data.
They require a lot of
data.
Right?
Correct. Exactly. And like exactly like that. And when you also, there is like this cost caveat. Sorry if I'm being very technical all the time.
No, that's why we have called you. Please educate us.
But like when you fine tune these closed source models as well, right? Now what that company has to do is like run a dedicated endpoint for you with your fine tuned model. So this is also something that will be easily solved with open source, because we have something like this LoRa fine tuning, right? So you have a layer on top of that. So you don't, when you're like fine tuning open source models, what we have been able to do, probably a couple of more players, they have been able to decouple this LoRa and base layer, right? So now if you are fine tuning 50 models, you don't need 50 GPUs to keep that running 24/7, right? Just need one GPU. You decoupled all those layers, you have a base model, you have LoRa layers on top of that, and you save like 50x of the cost, right? So I think those margins are really significant for enterprises not to choose open source.
I think there are many of these smart like switches customer can do, and the market is also learning. So I want to actually end with where we started, which is your journey. You mentioned there's not been a lot of cutting edge infra that has come out from India. Even in the developer tooling wave, of course, we got Postman, which we are very lucky to have from India. We have BrowserStack, we have a few other companies. But largely, when it comes to data infra, core infra, even Terraform that you're talking about, even though we have one of the largest, actually the second largest developer base in the world, we don't have proportionate representation when it comes to developer tooling and infrastructure. and we have had long chats about it.
Yeah.
There was the company has been through like fundraise struggles, right?
Correct,
I
correct.
think we would
Because
love to hear from you, like what you heard from investors early on, including us.
yeah.
I also passed on the first round,
Yeah.
so yeah, sorry for that again.
I think
But yeah, what was that reaction like, and what were you going through? And do you think that will change in India? How hard is it to build like a cutting edge infra company from India, and what do you want to change in the ecosystem to have more companies to trying it?
I think the ecosystem is definitely evolving from a standpoint that before Freshworks, I think we didn't have like a SaaS
Yeah.
success story.
Yeah.
Once they were able to do it. So this is very much like, I think there's this phenomena of I think Olympics 1970s or 1980s, when there was this notion that no one in this world can run a 100-meter race in less than 10 seconds. Once a person did that, 8 more people I think did that in the same year, right? So it's just about saying that, hey, this can be done, right? Freshworks built this SaaS company. They IPO'd on NASDAQ. That became, I think, the first company, SaaS company, to list on NASDAQ. Postman came in, BrowserStack came in, a lot of companies out there, right? We didn't have like a great payment integration SaaS. We had ChargeBee. So again, like a lot of from Axel portfolio only. Right now, the problem I think with the Indian ecosystem, at least from what I have experienced, is there's this notion that if Silicon Valley exists,
Yeah.
why do you need to innovate from India? And that's very counterintuitive of sorts. That is what so this is actually a rather interesting story from where it was like, it was kind of like a reality check for me, probably. So when we started fundraising, we were just 2 engineers out of our jobs, don't know anything about storytelling or business.
Yeah.
We were like, if we build a good product,
Yeah.
it'll sell itself.
By the way, I
That's-
still think your decks need a lot of work, but we'll get to it.
yeah. So we started out our fundraising, and we met this rather good VC in India, and the conversations went great. And like, I think we talked to all the partners in like 2 days. And when we talked to the last partner, he was like, everything is great, the problem sounds good, the product sounds good, team sounds good, but I don't understand the thing that why do 2 Bangalore boys need to build this when we have Stanford and San Francisco? So that was really depressing of sorts. And that is what I have seen a lot of people kind of think in the Indian ecosystem, that in India, companies cannot come out innovating. And I don't think so, because also why we didn't have infra companies, a lot of infra companies in the past, is because we didn't have a lot of tech opportunities in India itself, right? If you are a good tech guy, you'll probably go for an MS, or like you'll go in Microsoft Redmond or like Google California. You don't want to stay here, and you don't want to work in just like an IT consultancy of sorts, right? So it was really difficult. But in the past 5-6 years, I think we have seen that changing. People are realizing, firstly, Indian startups have started to pay great amounts. Even Indian companies have started to pay great amounts. And it's like, if you are able to get like 100K salary sitting in India, 300, like earning 300K in US, it actually remains the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's the point of view. I think that is changing. That a lot of
very good
people are
point,
seeing
yeah.
opportunities in India. They're staying back, right? Even like in the US, if you see a lot of companies that have came out, great companies, right? So there are like a lot of Indians who have finally migrated from India, right? So I think that is one perspective. And even like when the waves are coming, right? So space tech wave came in. We had great companies in space tech building out from India, right? And that is what I think we'll see in generative AI as well. At least even in our incumbents in India, they're doing great, right? They have built great platforms, like world-class platforms competing with the like global market, right? Even in the application layer, even in the infrastructure layer, I think it's just the point of kind of stopping the brain drain, as we say it, because we have great engineers. And I see that a PhD from Stanford probably would be going in a Lamborghini, right? And a PhD from ISC probably will be traveling in BMTC, and that's not fair, honestly. And I think that is changing, and that will be changing, because now researchers have started to realize that there are great opportunities in India where
Yeah.
they can build their own products, right? And
Yeah.
not just work in a research lab that is not able to pay them that
Sure,
much,
sure.
and hence shift to Stanford,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
But yeah.
Fair. Yeah. I think I loved your example setting point of view. I think if there were no Kapil, they probably would not have had Sachin. If
And
there were no
exactly.
Sachin, would not have had Virat Kohli.
Exactly.
Yeah. I hope for AI infra, you end
I
up
hope so
becoming
too.
the Sachin for this space. And wish you all the best for that. Thanks
you.
again for your time,
Thanks a lot,
Amritanshu. We
Anagh.
learned a lot about infra today.
I had a great time chatting.
Yeah, this was good chatting. I am glad we didn't get to Kuda. I think we're about to get there. So yeah.
But I tried to control
Yes.
that urge.
Good.
But yeah,
Good meeting you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the episode. Just like the railroads and the logistics networks power the physical economy, as we delve into the AI world, there will be this invisible infrastructure to most of us, which will be powering the use of AI, which augments our personal as well as professional lives. Very glad to see actually that not just Simplismart, but there are a bunch of other companies from India coming up and trying to go after that level of the stack. So thanks again, Amritanshu. This was a good conversation, and please stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we'll be decoding AI one by one with all these different topics.